Afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Maxon from Durnix. I am the director of sales here at Durnix. Been here for, I guess November will be 21 years at the company. So really appreciate you guys taking the time here this afternoon to join the session. And to go ahead and dive right in, let me tell you a little bit about the company. I do that. I'd point out that if you guys have any questions, feel free to put those in the questions chat section. Go to webinar panel, and we'll make sure we get those questions answered for you. I also have a slide at the very end that has my contact information, so you can feel free to contact me directly there as well. So again, a little bit about Durnix. We're actually based in Austin, Texas. We've got about 700 customers really all over the world. We're actually in 82 different countries at this point. We've been around for a little over 25 years now, predominantly focused on project and HR related time tracking. Probably about 15, 16 years ago, we decided to make a primary focus on the Microsoft Dynamics space, and that started with GP. So we have quite a bit of experience, as Judy mentioned, with working with GP clients to help them optimize their time tracking processes. The core Durnix applications are all web-based. We're a cloud solution. We actually leverage Amazon Web Services, not Azure, to do our cloud operations. Decision made above my pay grade, but I mean, what that really means, hosting with AWS, is we get to take advantage of a big hosting provider. So we're talking about disaster recovery and redundancy and data privacy and security. We've got a good partner there. And then as it relates to data privacy and security, that's really these days. And so here at Durnix, we go through a lot of internal and external audits on a pretty regular basis, really just to help ensure that your data is safe and secure in that cloud environment. So let's talk about time tracking.
Brian, are we doing okay? I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Really right? In our experience, these are really 4 categories track time for one of these categories. So just stepping through these here pretty quickly. Obviously, if we're talking about project tracking, so that's probably maybe like a professional services organization where they want to be able to compare their actual work to their project estimates. And so they need to be able to track their time against those projects. You want to be able to take the time that you've worked on historical projects then so that you can do better future projections of effort on projects coming down the pipeline. Related to that is being able to do sort of your project resource capacity planning and allocation across those projects. And then for your project managers, giving them access to reporting tools in real time that maybe you don't want them to have access to GP as an example, but they still want to run some reports over the status of their projects. Second category is what I'll call cost accounting. And this might be a GP customer that happens to use the project accounting module, but not necessarily. And typically the use case scenario there is people are interested in measuring their costs on a project so that they can understand, burn rates on projects. They can understand what their project profitability might be on a particular project. So that they want to be able to compare their actual costs to their projected cost on those projects. And then we have a lot of customers in software, pharmaceuticals, where there is an opportunity to claim a pretty big and substantial R&D tax credit. And so it's vital to be able to track your time against those types of projects so that you have the information to be able to sort of validate that R&D tax credit that you're making at the end of the year. Third category is probably pretty self-explanatory, and that's billing, right? So again, in my professional services type organization example, you might be doing some consulting services, you might be a GP partner, and you are implementing a GP or helping a GP client with an upgrade, and you may want to be able to bill that customer based on the actual effort that you're providing the services for. So being able to track time against those projects and being able to get that time into GP so you can accurately invoice customers on time. Obviously, being able to avoid manual processing of that data, so avoiding things like Excel spreadsheets or paper timesheets or that, so that you can really make sure that you're reducing errors, you're decreasing the time to cash flow by being able to automate some of those processes is pretty critical. And then we've got the fourth category, which is time for payroll. And whether you're processing that payroll through GP or through like a third-party, payroll provider like an ADP or Paychex or Paycom or something like that, it's really important to be able to track time for payroll that includes all of your different overtime calculations, especially if you're one of our friends in California that has some of the fun calculation rules out there. Being able to export that data out to your payroll solution, again, whether that's GP or third party. Being able to validate against time off balances, be able to do time off requests, things like that in advance, are really important for being able to process payroll, whether it's through GP again or through another provider. So those are really the four main categories on why we think people would need to be able to track time in Journix. And so now that we kind of understand what those categories might be, let's talk about some of the challenges. So first of all, nobody wants to fill out a timesheet, right? So the easier we can make this for everybody, the more accurate it's going to be, the more timely they'll fill out a timesheet. But over our 25 years, we get a lot of feedback from customers. We get a lot of feedback from our good friends within our GP community. But we also recently did a survey through our friends at MS Dynamics World. And pretty consistently, the sort of the top 5 challenges that people have are the ones that you see here in the middle of the screen. The biggest one of those really evolves around data accuracy. And typically the reason for inaccurate data entry all comes down to ease of use for the end user. As I mentioned before, and as you guys know, nobody wants to fill out a timesheet. So if it's not super easy, if it's not super intuitive, then people are going to go in there and just select the default value, or they're not going to spend the time to really think about what they're tracking their time against. And that's really going to lend to a lot of inaccuracies of the data, which really just means that all of your administrative staff then has to spend a lot of time going back and fixing a lot of bad data before you get it into GP for costing purposes or billing or payroll. The second challenge that we see is late or missing timesheets, and this is consistent across all of our customers. It's just people are always late, and the things that really lead to that again are also the user interface, user experience issues. So if you're dealing with an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document or a paper timesheet, or really even honestly some of the native options that are available within GP to track your time, it's not the most user-friendly way to do it. And so people are always late filling out their timesheet because they're like, it's the end of the week, I'm really busy, I don't want to fill out that timesheet, it's kind of difficult. So it suffers. Also, we're seeing a lack of mobile entry and having that kind of flexibility, especially nowadays when everybody's working from home or people are out in the field and they want to be able to track their time and don't have time to get into the office. Being able to do that, all the time entry through a mobile app is pretty critical. And then just having some flexibility around approval workflows, email reminders, late notifications, things like that can really help with that later missing timesheet challenge. The third challenge is more around integration with other business systems. So obviously, it's almost like table stakes, especially for this audience, that the time tracking solution needs to really tightly integrate with GP like Journix does. But we're also talking about the ability to integrate with other third-party tools like the third-party payroll providers, other tools like maybe a Microsoft project for people that might be doing their project scheduling in Microsoft Project, being able to integrate with data warehousing tools like a Power BI or a BI 360 from Solver, anything like that. So being able to integrate your time tracking process with all the other critical business solutions that you have is really important to be able to make sure that you can get everything that you need out of GP. The fourth challenge is there's not really a lot of good options within GP to be able to do like resource planning, resource capacity planning against your projects. And so we see a lot of people in the GP community that are using things like Excel spreadsheets to bring to their weekly project status meetings to manage their resources. And you can only imagine the amount of effort and time it takes to manage resources in an Excel spreadsheet. So being able to use a tool like Journix to be able to optimize your resource capacity planning on projects is pretty key. And then the last one that we've seen, I think that GP has done a better job of this as of late, but being able to track both your project-related time and your sort of HR payroll time all in one place is pretty critical. So within one timesheet interface, I can track all of that time instead of having to track my project time in one place and my payroll time or time off in a different place. People already don't like to fill out a timesheet, let alone do it twice. So having the ability to do that all in one place is pretty important. So now that we've gone through some of the reasons why people want to be able to track time, some of the challenges that they see, I wanted to briefly kind of give you an overview of the core products that Journix offers. And then I'll actually get into showing you a demonstration of the top two there, the Journix and the Journix PX. So our core Journix solution is the web application that does have a mobile app for both iOS and Android. We can actually track both time and expenses within Journix. It's more focused on project-based time tracking, but also allows you to track things like time for payroll, time off request in advance, but isn't really more of your traditional sort of like time and attendance type solution, which is where somebody might be clocking in and out with a badge or fingerprint reader for the sole purpose of being able to track time for payroll. The Journix PX solution, which really is just an extension of Journix, it's a key enabled feature set that sits on top of the core Journix solution, adds the ability to bring in that project resource capacity planning on top of the project time tracking. So it allows you to create projects or bring those projects in from GP. Then you can assign those projects out and the effort across resources so that you can do your forward-looking sort of resource capacity planning on future projects that are coming down the pipeline. And then finally, our third offering is what we call Journix ClockView. Journix ClockView is actually sort of our newer traditional time and attendance solution. So historically, Journix really just had the Journix solution and the Journix PX. We actually, earlier this year, in March of this year, acquired an organization called Acumen Data Systems out of the Northeast that brought in a solution offering to do the true time and attendance. So punching in and out through a piece of hardware, employee scheduling, mobile app clock in and out, supervisor entry, things like that. So now Journix can offer all types of time tracking for the Dynamics GP space. So with that being said, I did want to go ahead and give you guys sort of an overview of the Journix and Journix PX solution. So let me jump out of my PowerPoint here. And hopefully you can see what looks like a login screen for Journix. So again, Judy, can you see it?
Yes, we can.
All right, awesome. So again, Jernix is a web-based application, so you can access it with any standard browser. Again, we do also have a native mobile app for both iOS and Android that would allow people to enter their time through the mobile app, allow approvers, managers to approve the time through the mobile app, in addition to the web interface. I think it would make sense if I log in as somebody who can track their own time first. And again, we really want to keep this as simple as possible. And so I sort of set this up with the idea of somebody that might be using like a GP project accounting and would want to integrate Jernix time tracking with that. And so this is our basic standard sort of timesheet. And on this left-hand side, you can see I've got two drop-down columns here, one for my project, one for my cost category. There is also a free-form text field for entering in any sort of comments or notes that people might want to track against that. Any of those comments or notes that they make on their time entries can flow back through to GP. So if you want to sort of attach or append those comments to an invoice, that information would be there. And then on the right-hand side, we simply have a time entry period to enter in our hours. That period could start on a different day of the week. It could also be a different time. So it could be bi-weekly, semi-monthly, a monthly period, depending on the needs of the customer. But the basic process for entering time is really pretty straightforward. I can come in here and just maybe pick what project I need to track my time against, maybe my cost category. Let's say I did 4 hours of that on Monday, pick a different project here, same cost category, 4 hours on that on Monday, and I can simply hit the save button. So for basic time entry on projects and cost categories, it is really very simple. Now, a couple of other nice features around the time entry process that Jernix offers. One of them is that Jernix has a business rules engine built into it that can help validate the accuracy of the data that's being entered into the system. So give me a few examples of that. So what a lot of our GP customers will do so that people will actually go in and select a project and select the cost category is they may have their default option be, please select a project or please select a cost category. And if somebody were to track their time against one of those please select a blank objects, then the system can provide them a warning message asking them to go ahead and select the appropriate project or cost category from the drop-down menu. Another option might be that somebody can't track more than 8 hours against PTO in a specific day. Or you may want somebody to enter at least 40 hours a week before they submit their timesheet for approval. So those are some of the different business rules that you can build into Jernix that can help validate the accuracy of the data. And the whole idea around those business rules is that hopefully it will improve the accuracy of the data going into the system and thereby reduce the amount of time your administrators have to do fixing bad data. The other option or feature that I think is pretty cool that really helps the user experience is the ability to create what I'll call like a list of favorites. So let's say I work on these two projects and cost categories on a pretty regular basis. I have the ability to add those to my list of favorites so that, for example, if I was to hop out to next week, these projects and cost categories are going to be pre-selected for me. So instead of having to go to the drop-down menu and pick that every time, I can simply put my time against my favorites as I need to, which is going to save me just a little bit of time and effort when I'm trying to track my time. In addition to tracking time on projects, Jernix does give you the ability to track against time off categories. So I created this sort of time off project, but that could be true for things like overhead, internal meetings, things like that, that may not be a costed or billable project in GP. You'll notice that when I picked this time off project that it changed my options here in my cost category list. So you have the ability to build relationships between these drop-down columns so that, for example, somebody doesn't track like vacation back towards a billable project. As it relates to tracking time off, Jernix can calculate, display, and validate against time off balances directly on the timesheet in real time. If you happen to be calculating those time off balances in GP, or in the third-party payroll provider, or even potentially using like Comprehensive Leave Manager from our friends at Integrity Data, then we can pull those balances in from one of those systems and then still display and validate against those balances directly here in Jernix. Also, as it relates to tracking time off, Jernix offers the concept of what we call a leave request. So a leave request in Jernix essentially is the ability to request time off in advance directly through the Jernix user interface. So for example, let's say next Friday, I wanted to take some vacation time. I could actually go ahead and submit this time off request through Jernix. And then there's going to be an approval workflow process for that time off request to my manager. That includes email notifications. There is a leave calendar view in Jernix, so your manager can see who else is taking time off over a certain time period. If my manager approves my leave request, it would go ahead and populate that time off directly onto my timesheet. And that same thing could be said for any of your holidays. So you can pre-populate your holiday schedules into Jernix as well, and that would pre-populate that holiday time onto their timesheet. Once that basic concept is I fill out my timesheet for the period. If you did have any sort of overtime rules for any hourly employees, then we would go ahead and process all of those overtime calculations directly in Jernix as well. But once they fill out their timesheet for the period, they can go ahead and submit that for approval. There are some email notifications you could choose to use that, for example, can remind people to do those timesheets on time. You could notify both the employee and their manager if they are late doing their timesheet. And we can also notify the manager when something has been submitted for approval. All of those emails are optional, but it gets back to trying to solve one of those challenges we talked about previously, where you've got late and missing timesheets. So by using those email notifications and having a nice, clean, easy to use interface, then hopefully it reduces the need for you guys to go chasing down missing timesheets at the end of the week, every week. Normally I would pause here and ask any questions, but I'll go ahead, since we're in sort of webinar style format here, just to again remind you guys to add any questions that you might have to the GoToMeeting panel, and we'll be sure to answer those here towards the end of the session. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and log out as this end user, and I'm going to log in actually as an admin to the application, and we can take a look at some of the approval processes that are available within Jernix. We can also take a look at some of the native reporting options that are available. So I had mentioned that we have the email notifications that are available so that we could notify a manager if a timesheet had been submitted for their approval. There are also these in-system notifications that can be used. So in this case, you can see there are 5 new approvals waiting me for my approval. So when I go into my approval queue, I've got a few different options here. Where you first would land within Jernix is on what I'll call sort of a summary screen. So you can see the employee's name, you can see the time period, you can see the total hours that they worked. And I could, do a check all and approve. I could check these individually and go ahead and approve or reject these timesheets from the summary screen. Alternatively, I can click on this period link, which is going to open up a second window and allow me to drill down to more detail about this timesheet, including being able to see essentially a snapshot of all the detail from that timesheet. And then I could go ahead and approve the timesheet from this screen. I could reject it back to the employee. If I was going to reject it, I could put a reason for rejection here. So I can say, fix this data, whatever needs to be fixed. If I was to go ahead and reject that back to the employee, then we can send this message back to the employee as an email notification. We could also display this across the top of their timesheet so that they know what changes they need to make before they resubmit that for approval. Alternatively, as opposed to rejecting it back to the employee, an administrative type person or their manager could have the option to reopen this timesheet and go ahead and fix that bad data on behalf of the employee, again, as opposed to rejecting it back to them to fix it. A couple other notes I want to make about the approval workflow process is that you can have multiple levels of approval. So let's say that Judy is my manager, so she approves my timesheet first. And then once Judy approves it, maybe goes to somebody in accounting or payroll for a second level approval. You can have multiple levels of approval. And then within each level of the approval workflow process, you can also have both a primary and backup approver. So in my example, if Judy was out sick or on vacation, then my timesheet could be routed to her backup approver so it doesn't get stuck in that workflow process. The last comment I'll make around the approval workflows is that there really are two different types of approval workflow that are available. One option is to be able to approve time at the timesheet level. So that would be in my example where Judy's my manager. I submit my timesheet to Judy. She reviews my 40 hours for accuracy and goes ahead and approves my timesheet. The other option would be to be able to approve at the project level. So let's say I work 40 hours this week, so I submit my 40-hour timesheet to Judy, but I work on two different projects, maybe 10 hours on one project and 30 hours on another. Well, when I submit my timesheet, I could have just the 10 hours I work on project one go to that project manager, and project manager one would be able to review and approve my time just on their project without having to see all the other time I spent on the other projects that that person doesn't care about. And so you have both of those options when you're talking about doing approvals, both the sheet-based approval and the project-based approval. Both of those options have the multiple levels. Both of those options have the primary and backup approvers within those levels. So hopefully I answered any questions people might have around approval workflow processes. So let's take a look at some of the native reporting options that are available within Journix. And so one of those options and concepts is building out a reporting dashboard. So everybody who has the ability to run reports in Journix can build out their own version of their dashboard. Their dashboard, for example, my example here consists of my timesheet approval queue at the top. And then I just built out a couple different chart types here. This is just a bar chart by project, by person. This is comparing my actual cost to my budgeted cost on a project. And this is just a different type of chart. I got a pie chart here that's breaking down all the hours by project by percentage. Behind any of these charts is the actual report that's providing that data. So currently, the way that I have this report displayed on the month of October really just is a big data dump of all the data that's in the system for the month of October. Because what I want to show you guys is that you can modify any of these reports. And through this modification process, obviously you can pick a different date range for that report. You could filter out specific projects, specific people, specific cost categories. And then once you choose the data that you want to report on, you can then pick and choose how that gets displayed on the screen. So for example, if I wanted to see this information subtotaled by project, and then maybe by person within that project, I can then also control the columns that appear in that report. So I can remove columns, I can add columns back in. I can switch the order from left to right that those columns appear in the report. And I'll save and run that same exact report we were just looking at, but now you can see it subtotaled by project and then by person within that. There's a lot of flexibility within the standard reporting options within Journix. Of course, any of these reports for our Excel people out there do have a one-click export to Excel. So if I click that button, it's going to go ahead and launch Excel for me and dump this into an Excel spreadsheet, which is fine. But more importantly, what I want to show you guys is because we do have a lot of customers that like to use Excel to analyze data. Many years ago, we built an Excel plugin that we call ReportLink. ReportLink is essentially a small Windows application that when you install it on your computer is going to add this Journix tab to your Excel interface. What ReportLink is basically doing is using our API to connect Excel directly with the Journix database. So this is the link to that demo site we've just been using. What I would do is I would pick a date range, time information that I'm interested in. I would put in my login and my password to Journix because it's going to respect my permission levels within the application. And then I would click this refresh button. And when I put in my password, what it's going to do is it's going to go out to the Journix database and pull in all the raw time record information that falls into this date range. So then if I'm an Excel person and I like pivot tables, one of those. And because this is connected to that Journix site right now, all the fields in my field list are going to be all of my fields from Jernix. So I've got my projects, I've got my list of people here. Let me just build something really simple here and pull in my hours. But the idea behind this report link feature is you could build the 2 or 3 reports that you use on a pretty regular basis in Excel as a pivot table report, a worksheet report with a bunch of formulas or VLOOKUPs. Anytime you want to update any of those reports, you can just come over to this Jernix tab, update your date range, and click this refresh button. And it will go ahead and update all of those reports at the same time, because what it's really doing is updating the raw data set behind those reports. So for our Excel people out there, which seem to be pretty popular amongst our accountants in our GP community, it's a pretty cool little Excel-based data analytics feature that comes out of the box with Jernix, in addition to just some of the web-based reports out there as well. I'll go ahead and also mention at this point that we've got some pretty standard integrations in a similar fashion with things like Power BI or BI 360 for use that might use those other reporting tools to be able to do some further analysis of that data. So that's a pretty good overview of sort of the core base Jernix product from a time entry, approvals, and reporting standpoint. Obviously, all of this is integrated bidirectionally with GP, so any of the employee data, project data, cost category information that you have in GP would come over from GP into Jernix, and then we take that time and once it's approved, and we take that time and push it back into GP in a number of different ways depending on how you're using GP, whether it's GP project accounting, we send it over as a timesheet batch, whether you're just using GP to process payroll, we'll send it over as a payroll transaction. So we've got some flexibility on how we send it back over to GP. But what I wanted to shift a little bit of focus now to is the Jernix PX solution, which is that license key enabled feature set that adds that project resource capacity planning on top of the sort of Jernix time tracking that we just kind of went through. So when we're talking about Jernix PX, I think the easiest way for me to start there is to go ahead and just create a new project manually within Jernix. Now, again, obviously, ideally, we would pull all these projects in from GP, but in this environment, so let me just create this manually. So let me create project 5 here. And what I would do is say, okay, well, project 5, we're going to estimate that project to be, let's say, 300 hours. And we think we're going to start that the 1st of October. And we think that's going to go through the end of the year. So maybe this is a really short implementation project. And down at the bottom, I've got the ability to put in like financial information. So I think this project is going to be about $20,000. So I can compare my actual cost to my budgeted cost. We have this concept that we call custom fields, which are really like just extended attributes of this project. So maybe a project owner, what client this project was associated with, things like that. And all of these custom fields are reportable within the Jernix solutions. And then what I would do basically is I would save this project and I would view the assignments. And the first screen I come to allows me to sort of just summarize the project that I just created. But when I hit this next button, what it allows me to do is go find the right resources that should be working on this project. So here at the top, I've got some different search criteria. And these search criteria might be how you categorize your resources. So it could be a resource has a certain skill set, they might be located in a certain geographical location, any way that would make sense to segment your resources. And then I can search and filter by those attributes to be able to find the right people to work on project 5. Then when I hit the search button, what it's going to do is it's going to pull all the resources that met my search criteria. And for the duration of that project 5, in this green area, it's going to tell me these are the projects that this person is already assigned to work on. This white space is going to tell me how many hours over that duration of that project this person is available to work on other projects, like this project 5. And then this gray area is time that you've just predetermined that this resource is just not available to work on project time. So that might be a percentage of overhead, that might be taking into consideration time out of the office. but it's a good way to be able to see who's available and how available are they to work on this type of project. And what I would do is I would pick the resources I want to go ahead and assign to this project, and then I can click this Save Assignments and Modify Allocations. And what this would allow me to do then is modify the actual allocation of the effort against Project 5. So you see initially what it will do is it will take the hours and divide that equally amongst the 5 resources that I assigned to that project. But I might say, well, this resource is going to work, let's say 50 hours, which means this person needs to work 70 and so forth. And then I would go ahead and save that down here at the bottom. And basically by going through that process, what I'm doing is I'm saying I've got this project has this start and end date, it's this amount of effort, and I want to assign that effort specifically to my resources so that I can determine how available they are to work on other projects coming down the pipeline. And so the Journix PX solution allows you to make that type of assignment. And then there's different reports and views within Journix around that resource assignment. So for example, if again, I wanted to look at through the end of the year, I wanted to search by different resource attributes, I could do that. I could aggregate my result by any of those resource attributes. And when I hit search, again, this is a different view, but basically tells me, again, on this left-hand side, over this duration of time, these are the different projects that people are scheduled to work on, the start and end date for those assignments, and the amount of effort they've been assigned to work on that project. White space, again, is availability to work on other projects. Gray space is a percentage overhead. This availability calendar out to the right then actually shows you when they're busy. So you can see I actually have about 119 hours of time that are available for me to work on another project. But you can see I'm actually a little bit over allocated by this red line right up through sort of the end of October, and then I start falling off and I'm more available to work on projects then. Out to the right is similar information, just more of a textual type format. So you can see over this duration of time, there are about 403 hours that are available to me to work on projects. 284 of those and change to me so far. This is the variance, and this is my percentage allocation. And so this is a pretty popular view amongst our customer base that uses the Journix PX functionality to do resource capacity planning, as it gives you kind of a quick glance to help you answer the questions. Do I have enough resources to work on projects coming down the pipeline? Do I have the right resources based on resource attributes to work on this particular type of work? When they're busy, how available they are. And so you can see this at a glance, which will help you answer those questions. I have to go get outside help and hire consultants to get this work done, or do I have enough people on staff to be able to deliver this effectively and on time? So really, I think that's probably a good overview of the Journix PX functionality. I guess at this point, I probably would like to stop and ask if anybody does have any questions, or if there are any questions in the questions section of the GoToMeeting channel. If not, that's okay too. And let me pull up my my contact information here.
We don't have any questions at the moment, but feel free to either raise your hand or type them in the chat or question section. This is just a fantastic product, Brian. I just love this. That, you know, so I can think of so many businesses where, oh man, if they only had this, it would simplify everyone's life so much. I like how that, especially the last one where you're planning out and doing that. That was excellent. Well, even all of it, you know, the having multiple projects that people are working on or multiple people you're reporting to, it was just excellent, excellent. So
I really appreciate that feedback, Judy. Yeah, just in summary, the big difference is around Journix is going to be the ease of use for time entry for your end users. That's really the big deal. A lot of the native options within even GP or obviously Excel spreadsheets or paper is it's not user friendly. You've got the resource capacity planning capabilities within Journix PX, And I did want to mention again our newer time and attendance solution. So if you've got customers or you're an end user and you need to be able to sort of clock in and out on jobs, or clock in and out for the day for payroll, or do like barcode scanning in a manufacturing environment. While I didn't cover that in demonstration today, we do also offer that type of a solution. So if you have any questions today, that's great, that's fine. But you can see here on the screen my contact information. So please feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email with any additional questions that you might have, and I am more than happy to help answer those questions for you guys.
Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you at the Key to Act and GPUC week on November 15th through the 19th. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Jason.